Right, so here I have my demo example, and this is just a very simple blog website that I may or may not have stolen off the internet, but we're just going to use it. I've coded in a few vulnerabilities here, so we should be able to have a look at them. And you can actually follow along with this. There's the link for this should be in the description. The website is up on a public domain, so you should have no problem accessing this. It's built in Express.js, so nothing really crazy there. So I really encourage you to follow along actually and try and find these vulnerabilities yourself. And if you get stuck, then you can watch this video later. So what the feature-centric approach centers around is trying to identify smaller components before we dive into actually testing these massive features. So once you've picked a subdomain that you consider to be a valid target, like this app.jacobgen bug bounty domain, then we're going to hop in and start identifying features here that we can test on. So most websites actually have a lot more features than people think. So if you look at this login feature, then that's going to be a feature by itself. But so is the registration feature, right? And each of those is going to have a different flow to it, and each of them can have very serious vulnerabilities. So we shouldn't discount any features, like for example signing up, because if we sign up, then we might be able to override other users or access their details as well. So every feature is worth looking at, and the features that are often most overlooked actually sometimes carry the most critical vulnerabilities. So definitely it's worth analyzing all of them extensively. And the way we're going to do that is using a HTTP proxy. So hopefully you have one, which is either going to be Burp Suite or Kaido. And if you don't have one, then I made a video about how to set them up. So go watch that or any of the other tutorials online. But before we actually start hacking or actually looking at any of the features, we want to actually set up a few accounts, because to actually unlock some of the features, you'll need to go a few extra steps. So the number one step is obviously just going to be registering to the website and actually creating an account. And what I like to do is actually create two at the same time, so I can test things like IDORs and privilege escalation. So I have something here called, I think this is called Firefox containers, something like that. But basically, I can just hop in here and I can basically open up two containers, and this is going to separate my cookies on each of these platforms, which means that I can have two different accounts open. I think this also works as an extension in Burp Suite where you can have like your requests colored, which is pretty nice. So I'm just going to create those two accounts now and maybe make that password a little bit simpler, like so. Oh, example, and I will say gen2 gmail.com 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Already registered apparently. Say 5. Sure. Okay, we have two accounts now set up. You can see that we've immediately unlocked a lot more features. So if I was to kind of write down everything that I can test on this website, what I would say is we can probably test this profile, check the email. We can test these blogs here. We can test creating a new blog. We can test this logout feature to see if the session cookie gets removed. We can test signing up to see if we can sign up as an existing user or potentially do like a pre-account takeover, and test obviously logging in. So there's a lot to test on this website, and instead of looking at them at once, we're going to analyze them individually. So starting off with creating this blog, right? So different features will probably have different vulnerabilities associated with them. So like a webhook feature might associated with something like SSRF, while creating something like using an API might have more like IDOR type vulnerabilities. So the way I would start doing this is to basically just use the website normally, but include some payloads in here. So including payloads like XSS is a big one, and then another one is something like server-side template injection, which is less seen nowadays, to be honest. So I would probably focus on the cross-site scripting payloads. And what I would always do is try and get the workflow. So features can have more than one request, and they often have more than one. For example, signing up might be like basically sending a request to an authorization domain. The authorization domain might send a request back like a single sign-on feature. So there's different there's many HTTP requests that can be looked at, and when we're looking at features, we're going to look at all of them together. So I'm just going to send this create the blog thing to the HTTP request, and I think in this case it's just going to be one request. Yeah, it's going to be one request. So that's basically going to be the feature that we're going to look at right now. It's just going to be creating the blog and seeing what happens. So we've included our payload. You can see this creator ID here, so that potentially will point to an IDOR. We also want to have a look at for CSRF in this case. It's a JSON response type, and it doesn't seem like there's headers, so I don't think we'll be able to execute a CSRF here either. And in terms of authorization, we have a JWT token, which is normally fairly secure as well. So I think the main two vulnerabilities that we want to test for in this feature is going to be to look for the IDOR, which we're going to test for in a minute, and cross-site scripting. So let's see if anything fired, and I think we managed to get a HTML injection here. Yeah, so it seemed like we were able to inject the HTML tag here. So that's good. Now, as well as that, I want to test for the IDOR. So the way I would do that is on my second account, I would come here, and I would basically try and create the blog as well here. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Okay, let's go to new blog. Let's go blog title. And then I want to do this. And I will say something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 5, 1, 2, 3, 5. Submit it. And then I would just copy this ID here. Can you forward that actually? So if we, for example, insert that here, and then just call it like IDOR. So it seems like it went through correctly. And if we stop intercepting there, we have IDOR. And I think I was doing that on this account, was I? I'm a bit lost now actually. What does the JWT say? So now I kind of want to properly test for this IDOR. So hopefully we're going to keep track of which user IDs are actually the correct ones this time. So we'll go or like that. I'm just going to delete all of these. And we're going to keep this on the blue profile. So we're going to keep this request on the blue profile, which has this email. And we're going to see if we can make an IDOR to have the blog created on a different email than our own. So we'll just say IDOR, say like 123, 123, submit it. And we'll send that in again here. So that's the blue icon there. And we'll do the same thing on this side. So we'll go new blog. We'll go intercept to here. And then we'll say something like test 123, 123. And then we submit it as well. And then we'll just copy through this here. And then we'll just drop it right there. Now we're going to test for this IDOR. We're going to see if we can create one there on a different profile. And if we go here, we see that IDOR has popped up. So we'll just cancel the request. And yeah, it's been created on the other profile. So we have an IDOR where we can create a blog for a different person. And then we also have cross-site scripting, it seems. So that's good. So from that feature, we managed to extract two vulnerabilities. And you can see I've looked at this feature individually, right? So I've looked at this just one HTTP request, and I've considered several vulnerability types. I'm not just looking for one vulnerability type, right? I'm not just looking for an IDOR. What I'm doing is I'm analyzing the feature and I'm considering different vulnerabilities that might arise from it. I think some people say that you should just focus on one vulnerability. I'm not really an advocate of that actually. I think you should focus on specific features that you've tested before, because when you do that, you'll be able to see the patterns and see the mistakes that developers do and pick them out more frequently. Could say the same thing for something like an IDOR, but I think because websites are so different and an IDOR could literally be like anything, it could be a vulnerability in like any system. So I think looking at these features will actually develop your patterns faster than just looking for specific vulnerability types. So that's what we've done from the blog request feature, right? So creating a blog. And that's the first feature that I wanted to analyze. And the second feature, for example, let's say, is editing our profile. So same thing here. We're going to stop this here. We're going to say, for example, testing whether or not we can change someone else's email, for example. That's something that could arise from these vulnerabilities. Sometimes you might be able to bypass something called email verification, where you'll get like a code in your email or something like that. You might be able to bypass basically having to give that code, and you can basically set your email to whatever you want to, which in some websites is a very severe vulnerability. So we're just going to have a look at what this request for this feature looks like. So we've done it here. I'm going to send it to the repeater as always. So send it here. And what can we say about this request? Well, it's in URL mode, so it's URL encoded, potentially CSRF, but it does have the password here. So I don't think we'll be able to execute a CSRF just because the password is here, unless we can get rid of the password and it still works, which we'll test in a minute. So the cookies are as normal. There's no particularly interesting headers on the other side. And it seems like this is the only request for this feature because it's just redirecting us to profile after this. So what could we test for here? We could test for something like email validation. Maybe we can try a race condition as well. So has this actually made a change to my name? It seems like it actually has. So I wonder if we can do something like this. Maybe if we try and change the same email, does that work? It doesn't appear to have really done anything. Maybe we can like not include the password in here and change the email to something else like this. Well, did this work? I wonder. Okay, it did not seem to have worked either. So I don't think we'll be able to change another user's password because we'd have to know what their sorry, we wouldn't be able to change their email because we don't really know what their password is. So unless we were able to like basically like use our own password and then change their email like that, but I do not think that's going to happen either. We can give it a try though. Maybe we'll say something like this. Say password is like 1 or something. We'll change the email to email that we know, and then we'll refresh it here and go to profile, and that doesn't seem to have worked. This feature seems fairly secure because it requires your password, although it is being transmitted in plain text, so it's dubious whether or not that's actually safe, but yeah, that's basically the feature there, and it doesn't seem like there's anything, and I think I've considered all the possibilities here. So sometimes this will happen where you're going to be testing a feature and you're just going to find nothing because the feature is fairly secure. It's not like a bug bounty lab, not everything is going to be vulnerable, and in this case I don't think this is vulnerable. It's not really giving me any indication of that, but that's okay because we're going to go back to our feature-centric methodology. So we finished testing this feature, haven't found any vulnerabilities. That's okay. Maybe we'll just move on to another feature, right? So we've found these features here. We've been able to create blogs. We've seen that there's XSS there. There's an iDoor there. What else? So we've tried creating a new blog. We went to the profile here. Let's maybe have a look at trying to sign out of this or log out. What does that request look like? So we just send a request here. And it seems like all it does is just set our cookie to nothing. Does it invalidate the cookie, I wonder? Like, am I still able to use it here? For example, if we were to go back here and then I imagine yes, because this is a JWT token. So normally you're able to use them even after they're used, but we can just check that here. So if we go out, it seems like we've logged back in. So potentially sessions aren't being invalidated correctly. And this JWT usually has an expiration token. So we'll have a look here. Yeah, it seems like it'll expire here. I think this is Unix time. So we could test if it actually expires or not. So we could just wait for this time to happen and then see if it expires. That could be another vulnerability as logout feature as well. But apart from that, I'm not seeing any any other vulnerabilities in the logout feature. It seems like that's fairly secure. So what's left for us now? Well, now all that's left is to test its login and registration feature. I think I'm going to leave that to you though. Might add a few more features here when you're testing it. So I'll probably make this website a bit more advanced. I like comments and stuff like that, so you can test on it. But before I go, I just want to say that I actually have bug bounty labs in the description. They're kind of like this style, like what I'm showing you right now. So you can go in and basically try out to find bugs yourself, and that includes solutions in the descriptions. So yeah, if you want to get more of the practical side in, then that's a really good option for you. Here I'm just talking about the theory, of course. You're not really actually doing anything unless you're obviously going to the website here and you're testing yourself. But if you're just watching, you're not actually getting like the practical side in. And I think my bug bounty labs are actually great for that because they'll give you the skills necessary to actually find these problems yourself.